Welcome to the Cataclysm. Before you jump in, let me warn you about the fact that this is my first YouTube series ever. So saying that the first few episodes are a bit rough around the edges would be a little bit of an understatement. They are very slow, the audio isn't great, and the editing a bit clunky, to be honest. Here's the deal. If you really want to watch the entire series from the start, I salute your courage, but please do yourself a favor and speed up the replay speed to at least 1.5. If instead you are considering the option of skipping ahead, I'm now going to give you a very condensed breakdown of what happened in the first 12 episodes or so. I'll call out each episode and briefly go down the main story beats, so think of this as a sort of index. Episode 1 covers world and character creation. We are in version 0.E and I won't update for the rest of the series, because the experimental has some pretty extensive changes. For the world, I'm using mostly default settings. When it comes to mods, the only one that I've picked are disable NPC needs and stat through skills, because I intend this to be a easy run, so to speak. Z levels are disabled. For character creation, I stick to the multiple pools, the survivor profession, a spread of stats of 8, 10, 10 and 8, and the following traits: bookworm, fleet-footed, high adrenaline, night vision, lightweight, fast metabolism, nearsighted and truth teller. And lastly, we start with 3 levels in melee and dodge skill. In episode 2, we explore a nearby gas station and a farmhouse, mostly steering well clear from any threat. We collect a few basic skill books and random materials. A makeshift sling crafted out of Windows curtains is the high point of this episode. Episode 3 is titled Craft a Weapon, Kill a Zombie, and that's exactly what happens here. We combine a long stick with some string and a metal spike to create the infamous spike on a stick. Other than that, we also craft a few improvised lockpicks and a makeshift crowbar. Near the end of the episode, our impromptu polearm is tested against a lonely zombie roaming the outskirts of the nearby town of Burnhams. Episode 4. The first half of episode 4 is spent organizing our meager possessions on the floor of the evac shelter. While doing this, I go on explaining some basic stuff about crafting, skill books, food spoilage, and things like that. The second half features our brave hero foraging in the bushes along the edge of the woods and thus gaining a level in survival. Also, the auto-forage feature is briefly discussed. At the very end, we set up a 60-liter metal tank and a funnel combo so that we start collecting rainwater. Episode 5 is about crafting a brazier, which requires us to raise our fabrication skill to 1 and not survival after all. Instead of just reading from a book, I decided it would have been easier to get there through crafting, which isn't true of course, and that we had to craft fishing hooks out of nails. Nails that could have been acquired by disassembling furniture, which of course requires a screwdriver, but to craft a screwdriver you need a hammer. For a makeshift hammer we go around looking for short strings, even though we already had long strings, and for some reason this chain ends up including us looking into cars and bushes, and by the time we manage to craft a hammer and a screwdriver and get to actually disassembling a piece of furniture, we discover that that was in fact enough to gain a level in fabrication, and we never ever crafted a single fishing hook. By the end of the episode we managed to craft a brazier, we light it up, cook some food and boil some water. In episode 6, we start exploring and scavenging in the most accessible homes of Burnhams, and we immediately realize that most kitchens are stocked with perfectly viable strings, hammers and screwdrivers, sometimes multiple of them. The most exciting moment of the whole episode consists of us waiting for a small pack of rats to climb the stairs out of a basement. We of course slaughter them all without a sliver of mercy. Episode 7 starts with us finding a drivable, mobile meth lab, a vehicle that will become our best friend for the following 35 episodes at the very least. Crazed with a sudden jump in sheer destructive power, we proceed to run over Amigo so that we can safely loot a bunch of nearby corpses, gaining a leather backpack and a few more pieces of random junk. Episode 8 is where I begin to figure out audio levels and the concept of loudness. Without getting too much into details, you can probably start from here and not have to turn your volume up to 100% just to understand what I'm babbling about. Unfortunately, the content is pretty much your standard town looting run with a lot of window smashing and a little bit of zombie jousting. Episode 9 is just more of the same. Only highlights of these episodes are the find of a musical instrument in the form of a harmonica with a holder, and a not at all narrow escape on a bike freshly stolen from a zombie's backyard. Episode 10, on the other hand, brims with excitement, at least in comparison with the previous two. The interesting part being our hero using that bike to lead a group of zombies away from a military surplus store so that he can sneak inside and find so many MREs to last him a lifetime. Also, in this one I teach you the authentic Italian pronunciation of the word spaghetti. Mwah! Chef kiss. Now, as much as I would have loved to close this recap at episode 10, I just can't leave you to a whole episode of loot sorting, cooking, and armor layering, because that's what episode 11 is all about, honestly. So unless you're trying to work out the very basics of armor and encumbrance, you can safely skip this one. And while you're there, maybe episode 12 too, unless you want to watch me reading books and tear up old clothes. Okay, by episode 13, the series is a little bit more stable. But if you really want to jump in from a point where you can start seeing a little bit more action, take my advice and go straight for episodes 24 and 25. The first being the preparation and the second the execution of the cleansing of Burnham, in which we get rid of all the zombies in this small town with a sharpened fencing sword. And that's it. I sincerely hope this little guide will help you enjoy my very first Let's Play series of Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time. Alla prossima!